Real pleasure. King Brandon broke.
Yeah, Bob, I figure we start in like another minute or two.
Go ahead, Mike.
2 seconds. Hold on. All right. Good afternoon. Good evening. I always forget which one is which. I think after 5 o'clock, Bob, is it good evening or I don't know. But good evening, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, they, thems, and Mr. and Mixes and all of those things. Thank you for coming to our webinar presented by NYSCA, New York State School Counselors Association, on student anxiety and stress. We'll be going over a bunch of things, as you probably already know, but we have a few rules. Please try to mute yourself or keep your audio muted. We know sometimes, you want to get off of mute and talk, but please try to make sure that you are completely muted throughout this so that Shireen Henry can definitely get through her presentation without any interruptions. Um, Definitely, if you have any questions, you can type it in the chat. I'll be there and I'll be helping you or answering any of the questions that you have. Please, you don't have to get off of mute. We'll probably do that until the end. This is going to be a recorded webinar, so we want to make sure that Shireen definitely gets through her presentation, so that we don't have to get interrupting questions during it, and other people can actually watch it and play it back. So, we're going to save the Q&A for if you do get off mute to ask a question. We're going to save that for the end. And any things that we're sending out, any handouts or anything like that, if you've registered with your email, that's where all of the information will be sent. Okay. And without further ado, I am going to introduce our presenter, Shireen Henry. Shireen Henry is a dedicated mental health professional licensed in New York and New Jersey, and she is the CEO of Love Light Mental Health. Love Light Mental Health Counseling Services. She has a strong focus on holistic therapies, mental health challenges through, a compassionate and integrative approach. She's definitely passionate about creating a welcoming environment where clients definitely feel supported with their journey. She definitely understands how important and personal growth is. And as CEO, she definitely tries to lead her practice, just with the same love and compassion that she gives to her clients. So, very client-centered and definitely tries to help them foster resistance and, just promote overall well-being. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Shireen Henry. Thank you.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Can you all see me? Can you see my presentation? I just want to make sure. Okay, great. So thank you, Michael, for that wonderful introduction. And I want to welcome everyone tonight. We're going to be diving into understanding and managing anxiety and stress in students. I'm so glad to have you all here, and I hope this session provides you with practical tools and insights you can use in your work. So, as already mentioned, my name is Shireen Henry. I am a board-certified licensed mental health counselor. I'm licensed in New York and New Jersey, and I hold certifications in anxiety, trauma, and mindfulness. I run a practice where we focus on helping individuals manage anxiety and stress through a combination of clinical and holistic approaches. We use evidence-based strategies to help people improve their mental well-being. We help them navigate these challenges, so I'm excited to share some of these strategies with you tonight. So tonight we're going to talk about anxiety and stress, two natural reactions to pressure that can become significant problems if they persist over time. Anxiety and stress don't just affect academic performance, they can also impact the student's emotional development, social interactions, and long-term well-being. We'll be exploring clinical strategies to identify and manage these issues, and also look at holistic approaches that support students beyond traditional methods. So let's start by identifying the clinical causes of anxiety and stress. The first and probably most common stressor for students is academic pressure. This includes the pressure to get good grades, perform well on tests, and meet future expectations, such as getting into college or achieving a particular career path. For some students, even the fear of failure can be overwhelming, and they may experience anxiety just thinking about not living up to these expectations. It's important to remember that students may internalize these pressures, often feeling like they have to be perfect all the time. Family stress is another significant contributor to anxiety. Whether it's divorce, financial problems, or high expectations from parents, these issues deeply affect students' mental health. When a student is dealing with turmoil at home, their ability to focus in school is diminished. Parents' expectations, whether spoken or unspoken, can add another layer of pressure, as students often feel responsible for meeting those expectations or making their family proud. On top of that, family instability, such as a parent losing a job, can cause uncertainty that feeds anxiety. Social dynamics play a huge role also in how students experience anxiety. This includes friendships, peer pressure, and unfortunately, bullying. Students are constantly navigating complex school relationships, and the fear of being excluded or judged can create immense stress. Bullying, whether it's in person or online, can severely affect a student's self-esteem and sense of safety, leading to long-lasting anxiety. Even in healthy friendships, the desire to fit in or maintain certain social standards can contribute to stress. Then we have what I call the silent stressors, factors that may not be immediately obvious, but significantly fuel anxiety. One of the biggest silent stressors today is social media. Students are constantly comparing themselves to others, whether it's about appearance, lifestyle, or achievements. This constant comparison creates a sense of inadequacy, especially when students see only the highlight reel of others' lives. Perfectionism is also another stressor, silent stressor. Students may feel like they always need to be the best or achieve perfection, which can lead to chronic anxiety. Perfectionism often goes unnoticed because these students may seem high achieving, but beneath the surface, they're struggling. And finally, we need to consider cultural and environmental factors. Cultural expectations such as societal norms around success, gender roles, or family responsibilities can exacerbate stress, particularly for students who feel pressured to conform to these standards. Additionally, the physical environment in schools can be a source of stress. For example, crowded classrooms, lack of privacy, or even the overall atmosphere of the school, whether it's supportive or punitive, can significantly impact the student's stress levels. In some cases, just walking into a school that feels chaotic or unsupportive can heighten a student's anxiety without them even realizing why. So anxiety often presents in hidden ways. For some students, the signs are not immediately obvious. They might exhibit emotional symptoms like worry, fear, or irritability. These students might seem on edge or overreact to seemingly minor issues, which could be their way of coping with internalized stress. Other students may exhibit physical symptoms, headaches, stomach aches, or difficulty sleeping. These physical complaints often arise when students are under stress, but they may not connect the dots between their anxiety and these symptoms. It's common for these students to frequently visit the nurse or complain about feeling unwell, and in many cases, the underlying cause is emotional. Behavioral changes are another sign to watch out for. Students with anxiety may start to withdraw from activities they often enjoyed or show signs of procrastination and avoidance of certain tasks. This can be particularly noticeable in students who were previously active or engaged. They might stop participating in class discussions, avoid group work, or fail to turn in assignments, all of which can be linked to overwhelming feelings of anxiety. Sometimes anxiety hides behind perfectionism. These are the students who appear to be high achieving and are constantly striving to meet expectations, but internally they're struggling. Their perfectionism can cause a coping mechanism for anxiety as they try to control their environment and outcomes. These students may be praised for their accomplishments, but that praise can unintentionally fuel their anxiety even further. Comorbidities or overlapping conditions are common when it comes to anxiety. One of the most frequent overlaps is ADHD. While both anxiety and ADHD can lead to disorganization or difficulty focusing, the key difference is that anxiety fluctuates with stressors, whereas ADHD is more consistent. For example, a student with anxiety may perform well when relaxed but struggle under pressure, while a student with ADHD tends to exhibit symptoms more regularly, regardless of the situation. And trauma is another factor we need to keep in mind. Trauma can present itself as anxiety and often manifests through both emotional and physical symptoms. Students who have experienced trauma may seem hypervigilant, constantly on alert, or they may shut down entirely. This trauma-related anxiety often leads to physical symptoms like headaches or stomach aches, similar to other forms of anxiety, but it's crucial to recognize the deeper emotional roots when trauma is involved. All right, so let's move into the impact on anxiety, the impact of anxiety on academic performance. Anxiety can significantly affect a student's academic performance. One of the most common impacts is decreased concentration. Students with anxiety often find it hard to focus on tasks as their minds are preoccupied with worries. Whether it's ruminating about upcoming tests, peer relationships, or personal problems, these intrusive thoughts pull them away from the present moment. This lack of concentration can make even simple tasks feel overwhelming. Students may struggle to stay organized, forget assignments, or have difficulty following lessons, which leads to further frustration. This difficulty concentrating often results in poor academic outcomes. It's not just about failing tests or getting bad grades, it's also about missing opportunities to learn and grow. Anxiety can cause students to leave assignments incomplete even when they have the ability to finish them. The overwhelming pressure to get things perfect or the fear of failing might lead to avoidance behaviors. Instead of risking a bad grade, some students may not turn in assignments at all. This can create a vicious cycle where their performance continues to drop, reinforcing their anxiety. And for some students, anxiety leads to absenteeism. This isn't just about skipping school for the day. Some students avoid certain classes or subjects that trigger their anxiety. For example, A student who feels anxious about math might conveniently miss class every time there's a test or a group project. In severe cases, students may develop school refusal, where the anxiety is so intense that they avoid school altogether. This avoidance can make the problem worse because the more they miss, the more difficult it becomes to catch up, further increasing their anxiety. And another major impact of anxiety is cognitive overload. Anxiety consumes so much mental energy that there's very little room left for actual learning. Imagine a student sitting in class while their peers are focused on the lesson. They might be thinking about all the things that they have to do or worrying about something completely unrelated to school. When the brain is occupied with these anxious thoughts, it's harder to process new information or retain what's being taught. The student may appear to be paying attention, but is mentally disconnected. Some students disguise their anxiety by pushing themselves too hard. These are the students who seem highly engaged, always striving for the best grades, or taking on more responsibility than they can handle. On the surface, they appear to be thriving, but underneath, they're overwhelmed by anxiety. Their high performance can mask the fact that they are burning out. This type of behavior can go unnoticed because it's often rewarded by teachers and parents, but it comes at a high emotional cost for the student. And then we can't overlook the impact of trauma on anxiety and academic performance. For students who have experienced trauma, their anxiety may be even more pronounced. Trauma can lead to emotional disengagement from school or cause absenteeism as students struggle to process what they've been through. The effects of trauma can be both emotional and physical and often exacerbate the challenges of anxiety. These students might have difficulty forming connections with teachers or peers, or they might struggle with authority figures, making it even harder to succeed academically. All right, so let's get into some clinical strategies for managing anxiety and stress. There are several effective strategies for managing anxiety and stress. Mindfulness techniques such as breathing exercises and guided meditation are particularly helpful in common students during moments of stress. These practices allow students to focus on their breath and regain control of their emotions. Helping students with time management is another important strategy. Breaking tasks down into smaller, more manageable steps can help students feel less overwhelmed. When students learn to approach their schoolwork step by step, it reduces anxiety and helps them stay on top of their responsibilities. Encouraging healthy routines is essential for mental health. Consistent sleep patterns, regular exercise, and proper nutrition all contribute to a student's ability to handle stress. Without these basics, it becomes much harder for students to manage their emotions. Breathing techniques such as the 4-7-8 breathing technique and box breathing are simple but powerful tools for calming the nervous system. These techniques can be easily taught and used by students whenever they feel anxious, whether in the classroom or at home. Somatic therapies like grounding exercises and body scans help students reconnect with their bodies, especially when anxiety manifests physically. By focusing on physical sensations, students can ground themselves and alleviate some of the mental and physical tension they experience during moments of high stress. For younger students, play-based approaches like drawing or role-playing can be especially effective in helping them express their anxiety. Younger children often struggle to verbalize their emotions, so these activities provide an alternative outlet for them. Additionally, having consistent routines help reduce anxiety for younger students, as routines provide stability and reduce uncertainty in their day-to-day lives. All right, so I think this is the exciting part. Let's go into what the school counselor's role is in a holistic and a clinical approach. As school counselors, your role is essential in helping students manage anxiety and stress. The strategies we've discussed can only be effective if they are applied in a supportive, structured environment. Let's talk about how you can implement these strategies within your work with students. So mindfulness. These techniques can be introduced through individual group sessions. For example, during stressful periods like exam time or after a school event, you could lead short mindfulness exercises to help students center themselves. This could be a daily 5-minute mindfulness moment in your office or a designated calm corner in the school where students can go to practice these techniques. Teaching students how to engage in mindfulness activities like breathing exercises or visualizations gives them tools they can use independently, even when they aren't in a counseling session. Time management. Time management is a skill that counselors can really help students develop. Many students feel overwhelmed by their workload because they don't know where to start. You can teach students to break down large projects into manageable steps. For example, if a student is feeling anxious about an upcoming paper, help them create a timeline, breaking the task into smaller pieces like research, outlining, drafting, revision. This process of chunking tasks can greatly reduce anxiety because it gives students a clear path forward. You can also hold time management workshops or provide templates that students can use to plan out their study time. When it comes to healthy routines, you can collaborate with parents and teachers to reinforce the importance of sleep, exercise, and nutrition. Often, students are not aware of how much their physical health affects their mental state. During your counseling sessions, you can discuss the importance of maintaining a balanced schedule and even provide a practical tip like creating a consistent bedtime or setting a screen time limit before sleep. In schools, you might work with physical education teachers or nutrition programs to ensure that students have the resources to maintain healthy habits. Now, one of the simplest ways, which is most effective tool you can teach students is the breathing techniques, right? You could start a session by leading students through a 4-7-8 breathing or box breathing, and then discuss when they might use these techniques before a test, during a conflict, or even just to calm themselves during the day. The great thing about breathing exercises is that they are discreet and can be done anywhere without drawing attention. You might even create a breathing guide for students to keep on their phones so they can have a quick resource they can access whenever they feel anxious. And so the 4-7-8 box breathing technique, it is what you do is you inhale for 4 seconds, you hold that breath for 7 seconds, and then you exhale for a full 8 seconds. Now, what's really important about the breathing is not how long you're holding or inhaling for, it's where the breath is coming from. So we want to remind them to take very deep breaths from their diaphragm, really deep breaths. And when they're inhaling, hold that for the 7 seconds and then exhale fully. This actually really, very minimally, very basically, right? It helps your brain receive oxygen, which then levels everything else out. Now, introducing somatic therapies is especially helpful for students who feel their anxiety physically. Students who complain of stomach aches, headaches, or restlessness, you can guide them through grounding exercises which help them focus on physical sensations like their feet on the ground or their hands touching a desk. This brings their attention away from anxious thoughts and back to the present moment. A simple body scan where students focus on each part of their body and release tension can also help students manage physical symptoms of anxiety. As counselors, you can practice these techniques with students in the session and encourage them to use them when they feel anxious during the day. Younger students often struggle to articulate their anxiety, so using play-based approaches can help them express themselves in a way that feels safe. During your counseling sessions, you can offer activities like drawing, role-playing, or using toys to help them communicate what's bothering them. For example, a child might use drawing to show their fears or use role play to act out a stressful situation at school. This approach allows younger children to work through their anxiety without needing to rely on words. Additionally, establishing consistent routines for younger students, both in counseling and at school, helps reduce their anxiety by creating a predictable structure. You can collaborate with teachers to ensure that classroom routines are consistent, giving younger children a sense of security throughout the day. And finally, as school counselors, your role extends beyond direct work with students. You have the ability to advocate for mental health programs that incorporate these strategies into the broader school environment. Whether it's running mindfulness groups, working with parents and teachers to establish healthy routines, or helping to create a school-wide approach to managing anxiety, your influence can make a significant difference in the overall mental health of the student body. Now, one of the key elements of emotional health for students is learning how to set healthy boundaries. Many students, especially those who are high achievers or deal with anxiety, often take on too much. They struggle with perfectionism and have a hard time recognizing their limits. These students tend to say yes to everything, whether it's academic responsibilities, extracurricular activities, or helping friends, which can lead to burnout. Teaching students how to communicate assertively is crucial. Assertiveness is about striking a balance between being too passive and too aggressive. It means helping students understand that it's okay to say no when they feel overwhelmed and that they don't need to take on everyday tasks or responsibilities that come their way. You can work with students on identifying when they are feeling stressed or overloaded and help them practice phrases like, "I'm not able to take that on right now," or "I need more time before I commit to this." These may seem like small steps, but they go a long way in teaching students to protect their mental health. One approach you can take is to have role-playing exercises where students practice setting boundaries in different scenarios. For example, a student could practice saying no to a friend who is pressuring them to join an extracurricular activity they don't have time for, or saying no to a group project request when they are already overloaded. These exercises help students feel more confident in expressing their boundaries in real-life situations. As school counselors, you can play an important role in modeling healthy boundaries. Your actions and behavior set an example for students you work with. It's important to show that you prioritize your own well-being by setting limits on your work and your personal life. For example, if you're always accessible or working late, students may feel they too need to be on all the time to succeed. By maintaining your own boundaries, like finishing work at a reasonable time or stepping away from responsibilities when you need to, or taking your lunch break, you demonstrate to students that it's okay to prioritize their mental health. Demonstrating your own boundaries might mean things like taking your lunch break and not working through it, or communicating to students that you will respond to their emails during school hours, but not afterward. These small actions show students that it's healthy to set boundaries and they don't always have to be available or say yes to everything. Additionally, you can encourage students to take ownership of their own schedules by setting boundaries with their time. For example, if a student is feeling overwhelmed by homework and extracurriculars, you can work with them to create a weekly schedule that includes time for self-care, hobbies, and relaxation. Teach them that part of setting boundaries is ensuring that they have a time and rest for downtime, which is just as important as their academic responsibilities. Boundaries are not only important for reducing stress, but also for preventing anxiety from building. When students don't know how to set boundaries, they tend to take on more than they can handle, which leads to chronic stress. Over time, this can cause both emotional and physical burnout. By teaching students how to assertively communicate their needs, you empower them to protect their emotional health before things escalate. Setting boundaries is a healthy, necessary skill for managing stress and anxiety, and it's something that you, as school counselors, can help students develop over time. By modeling healthy boundaries in your own life and teaching assertiveness, you can make a real difference in how students navigate the pressures they face, both in and out of school. Okay, so collaborating with families. When it comes to managing student anxiety, open communication with families is so crucial. Parents are key partners in helping their children navigate stress and anxiety, and their support can make all the difference in how a student copes. As school counselors, regular check-ins with parents provide a more holistic view of the student's well-being. You can encourage parents to be involved in their child's emotional health by opening a dialogue about what the student may be facing at home and in school. These conversations help bridge the gap between school and home, making sure everyone is working together to support the student. It's important to remember that many parents may not fully understand how anxiety manifests in their child. This is where you can provide valuable educational resources. For example, you could offer informational handouts or guides about the signs of anxiety and how parents can help their children manage it. Hosting parent workshops or family counseling sessions on managing anxiety could also be effective in giving parents tools and strategies to use at home. In many cases, parents want to help but may not know how. So giving them practical tools such as ways to manage stress before tests or encouraging healthy routines like sleep and downtime can make a big difference. Helping families create a supportive environment at home is one of the most impactful things you can do. Students need to feel that home is a place where they can express their emotions without judgment or fear of disappointing their parents. As school counselors, you can encourage parents to ask open-ended questions and create opportunities for their children to talk about their feelings. For example, instead of just asking about grades, parents can ask, "How are you feeling about school?" Or "What was the best part of your day?" This encourages children to share not just their academic challenges, but their emotional experiences as well. Helping families understand that emotional well-being is just as important as academic success fosters a more supportive home environment. Sometimes these conversations need to go beyond the surface. As a school counselor, don't hesitate to initiate deeper conversations with families about a student's emotional well-being. It's just not about the grades or the behavior in school. Sometimes there are deeper concerns that need to be addressed, like family dynamics, bullying, or social struggles. Encouraging parents to explore their child's emotional health helps shift the focus from just academic achievement to overall well-being. You might consider asking parents how their child behaves at home, whether they've noticed any changes in mood or social interactions, and if there are stressors at home, they may be contributing to the student's anxiety. Referring students to mental health professionals is sometimes necessary when the anxiety or the stress goes beyond what can be managed within the school setting. As counselors, it's important to recognize when a student's anxiety is more severe, especially when it's linked to trauma or chronic anxiety. While school counselors can provide valuable support, there are times when a therapist or a psychologist is needed for more specialized care. You can also help families understand the importance of seeking outside help and assist them in finding the right resources, whether it's recommending a therapist or pointing them to community mental health services. Letting families know that early intervention is key to managing anxiety helps ensure students get the support they need. Collaboration with families doesn't end with just conversations. Encouraging ongoing communication between the school and the family is vital. This means regular updates on the student's progress, whether through emails, phone calls, or even family meetings. Building a strong relationship, the family fosters a team-based approach to the student's mental health, ensuring that the strategies implemented in school are reinforced at home. When families, counselors, and teachers work together, it creates a strong support network for the student. So we've covered a lot of ground today, and from understanding the clinical causes of anxiety and stress to learning how to recognize hidden signs and ultimately how to manage anxiety and stress in students using clinical and holistic strategies and approaches. We've also explored the important roles that school counselors play in not just identifying anxiety, but in collaborating with families and creating an environment where students feel safe to express their emotions. Remember that early intervention is key. Working with students to help them manage their anxiety at the onset can make a big difference in their long-term emotional and academic well-being. So I want to thank you all so much for being part of today's session, and I hope you found these strategies and insights useful as you continue supporting your students. And now I think we will be moving on to questions, Q&As.
Yeah, thanks, Shireen. If anyone has any questions, you could just unmute. There's not a million people on. There's 59. You could just unmute and ask your question or put it in the chat. Everyone's making dinner.
Hi, Shireen. My name is Denisha Eady. I'm from a charter school in Queens. Thank you so much for your presentation and the way you broke down everything. I really appreciate it. So currently I work, I'm sorry.
No, I said you're welcome.
Okay. So currently I work with mainly 8th graders in the middle school, and around this time they're going through the high school process. You know, like I also co-teach a student success seminar, which is, you know, social emotional health and also CTE skills. But what I'm observing now within my students is, on top of this high school process, yes, it's overwhelming and stressful. When I have them do the reflections, almost all of them say they're bored in school all day long. Now I'm wondering, can the boredom also be, you know, like a sign of the anxiety and stress as well?
Yeah, good question. So the boredom can be a number of things, right? They could be avoiding, in a sense, right? It could be a sign that they're actually not being honest and giving you like what is really happening. So they're just saying they're bored as an excuse, right? Which I think you have to factor in, like, what are their grades like? Are they doing well in school? Are they excelling? Because a lot of times when they are doing well and excelling, boredom might be a sign that they maybe need to be challenged a little bit more, right? So the boredom might not necessarily be related to anxiety. We would need more information. I think we need to do a little bit more assessing with them to kind of, you know, identify where it's coming from.
Got it. Thank you. In response to that, it's all different, you know, like GPAs and how they're doing in school. Part of it is, you know, like it's a long academic day and week for them. I feel like going back to the biggest silent stressors that you also mentioned in the beginning is social media. You know, so it's like, how does that also, like, what can I do? What can we do as, you know, counselors and social workers in schools to really, you know, support our students with this?
Yeah, social media, as I mentioned, it's like we're fighting, you know, with social media. We're in competition, right, with social media. I think what we do as therapists in our sessions with clients, when we notice that there is a lot of interest in social media, we inquire about, well, what are the things that they're watching on social media? What is it that they're interested in, right? And we try to use the social media to our advantage, right? Maybe we will, because, you know, TikTok University is the thing, right? I know whether they're teenagers or they're adults, they come to our sessions and they mention something that they saw on TikTok. And what we do as therapists, we use that and we incorporate it into our treatment, right? What the things that they're seeing online, how is it impacting them? How is it affecting them? I think a deeper conversation, not just straying away from the social media because we all think, okay, this is not good for them. But if they're so interested in it, how about we try to figure out ways to use it in our treatment with them?
Got it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Oh, I see something in the chat. As a school counselor, what would be some additional strategies to use with students experiencing irrational thoughts? For example, a student has high 90s, great attendance, but is going home saying they hate school, are stressed, and feel like a failure.
Yes. So yeah, that's definitely in regards to their anxious behavior. So irrational thoughts, I think what we like to do is, here as therapists, we try to use fact versus opinion. So what that means is we identify what the facts are of the situation, especially someone who you mentioned is doing well and excelling. What are the facts of the situation, and then what are their feelings? We like to teach that feelings are not facts, feelings are opinions, right? So just because you feel that way does not mean that's what's actually happening, right? So the ruminating thoughts or the irrational thoughts, we kind of try to ground them by trying to identify what is real and what is not.
Thanks for the question, Nicole. I think the other thing that happens with kids in schools is when they report that they hate school when they get home, although they're doing real well, is there may be some other reason they hate school. There may be a bully, there may be a teacher who's being rude to them, there may be something else that's going on, and that's the hard part. That's the maybe, to get to that thing. They do well when they get there, but they don't like going.
Yeah.
That was my experience in the middle school.
Yeah, there's a number of things it could be. I think, for me, I'm not sure how much time, school counselors spend with their students. What I do know is that there are a lot of students and not many of you, right? It's not like our one-on-one work. So I think there might not even be enough time with the student to really figure out like what is all that is going on, or what are the reasons that they hate school. I just can't imagine that you have enough time with them to really figure that out. So, calling in the rest of the team or referring, speaking with the parents to get more information, or, recommending maybe some other help, like a therapist who can spend more time with them. And then you even collaborating with the therapist, right? It's okay for you guys to communicate with the child's therapist for you to gain more information that way.
Any other questions?
I just think, first of all, your presentation blew me away. It was magnificent. Your information is beyond. But sometimes when it comes to students saying, that they hate school, it goes back to one of the things that you said. You have to break it down. What don't just say all at once, it's school I hate, because it's parts of it. So when you said it's just to break it down for them so that they get a handle on what it is exactly in school that is frustrating them and causing anxiety. So thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. I think that often, even as adults, we don't have the words to describe what's happening or what's feeling. So imagine children who don't have as many years or experiences, as of yet, they definitely don't know how to express themselves. So school, you might think at first it might be, oh, like the work's too hard, or, I don't want to be here, but like, that's not really what they're saying, right? Their challenges, right? Their challenges daily are not our challenges daily. They all have different experiences. And I think for my practice and my team, what I like to, drill into everyone is that each person is different, right? We are individuals, right? There's a different thing going on with each person. And we have to take the time to really figure out, when this person says, oh, I hate school, well, what did they mean by that? Because they don't mean they hate school. It's like, why do you hate school? What's happening? What do you like? If they can't tell you what they don't like or why they hate school, find out what they do enjoy, right? Process of elimination. It's easier to talk about things that you like versus things that you don't like, right? So there's a lot of digging, a lot of investigating, I like to say, as a counselor, whether you're a school counselor or you're a therapist, right? There's a lot of investigations that have to occur in order for us to obtain the information that we need in order to offer help.
Yes, yes. Oh, thank you.
Anybody else? Oh, died in sleep. Okay, good.
I have another question, Shireen.
Yeah.
Going back to when you were talking about getting the families involved as much as possible, how can we bridge that gap and improve parent engagement while also being, culturally competent, and mindful of, different cultures and everything, to really just encourage and promote, to help parents also understand that it takes a village to raise children, and we all should be and have to be working together in order to, like fully support our students and to also, strengthen the relationships at home, because again, you don't know what they're going home to and everything, but to also, again, strengthen those relationships at home and in the school.
Yeah, yeah. So it's difficult, right? Because you don't have any control whatsoever about what happens once the child leaves the school grounds, right? And so I think for parents, it's education, right? Like I mentioned earlier, psychoeducation. If you can get some sort of idea about what's going on with the child, then that's when you bring it to the parent, right? To kind of provide them with education on maybe not, oh, your child is experiencing anxiety, but like, maybe, you know what do you know about anxiety? Do you know how it manifests? We like to call it psychoeducation, right? Providing them with the information and then finding a way to, um, add their child to the mix. Maybe asking about maybe things that you see that the child is exhibiting in school, finding out if they're doing it at home, and then providing an explanation of how maybe anxiety manifests itself. We don't know what the parent knows about anxiety, so just approaching them with, okay, well, this is what we need from you, is difficult. They're probably dealing with their own anxiety. To be honest with you, most people deal with anxiety, struggle with anxiety. So it's like the parent might be struggling also. So I think there's a lot of assessing that has to go on. It's going to be different for every family, but the more information or education you can provide the parent with, I think you're preparing them to help you. You have to help them help you, because they too sometimes don't know.
Thank you.
Shireen, I had a question. So do you think, okay, so we could pay attention to a majority of factors that can contribute to anxiety for our students, but do you think that it could drastically alter a student's behavior from one day to the next? Like I had a student who was doing very well in school, high achieving, and then like from one month to the next, it was a drastic change where they were not doing any work. They were destroying the classroom and continued on till the rest of the school year. So the first 2 years at the school, they were fine, high achieving, and then towards the middle of their third year, there was a change.
So I think that when you notice a drastic change like that, we have to we want to find out, well, what happened? Like, you know, even if it's anxiety, it might be manifesting itself as anxiety, but like, what was the event that caused the anxiety? Right? There's something happened that is now impacting their behavior. And so there's digging that we have to do to kind of find out what is going on. Maybe the parents are going through a divorce. Maybe they heard their parents fighting. They heard them say certain things. And it's manifesting as anxiety because they don't actually know how to cope or deal with the situation. They feel these things, they don't know what it is, they don't know what to do, and they're struggling with that. So now they're struggling in school, right? They might be embarrassed that they're feeling this way. They don't know how to process their emotions, right? So what do we like to say? The child is acting out, right? I don't really believe in the whole acting out thing. If you feel like a child is acting out, it's because something happened. You have to try to figure out what is it that happened, right? So there's a lot of questions, right, to be asking the child, the parent. To answer your question directly, yes, it can be anxiety that's manifesting itself in this way with changed behavior, depending on how old the child is, right? The less words that you have to express how you feel is the more of a behavior shift you will see. And so in young children, the way anxiety manifests is definitely through behavior. There's a lot of other, situations that will affect their behavior as well, and anxiety is one of them.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Got a great question in the chat from Cynthia regarding school refusal and attendance. I don't know if you can see it, Shireen.
Yeah. Is it school? I'll just read it out loud. It's
Okay.
right, Cynthia Roderick. Okay, thank you for okay. As an elementary school counselor, I have so many students who prefer to stay at home because during the pandemic, they were exposed to so much gaming. They have told their parents they hate school, hate the teacher, and will give their parents difficulty to come to school. The parents have to work and will state that their child has anxiety, so they won't send them to school. Once the parents let them stay home, it starts a vicious cycle where the parent decides that they want them to come to school, but the student starts to often say they are sick. They will throw up and become defiant as a result. The parent comes into school and will start to ask for help because they also can relate with their child and say that they suffered with anxiety as a child. After we put community support to support the student and family, the situation spirals out of control. And even with the community support, the child will refuse to join virtually with the therapist. Okay. Wow. Right? Okay. So the onset of this was the pandemic and being exposed to gaming. Right? So while we were home during the pandemic, the parent kind of just let them do what they wanted to do. That's what I'm getting from it. This is how they develop this habit of gaming, right? So now they're using sicknesses to get out of participating in school and doing what they need to do. Okay, so I have a question for you. What exactly is your question in regards to this situation?
I'm sorry, I know it's very long. So we put things into support. The parents are saying that they're done. And this is not just one student. We've had actually several students with the same issue. But in this situation, the parent now has just gotten to the point where she doesn't send them to school. And she refuses to answer any class dojos, any certified letters home. The attendance team have knocked on her door and she just refuses to open the door. ACS was called and she just becomes angry, and then it goes back to the same thing. Now she's using the excuse that he's sick, he has asthma, he has all this other stuff. And my question is just in general, in regards to parents, right? So she herself has become I don't know. I can't say she's become defiant. It's just that now she's at the point where she's done. She's saying she has to go to work. She says her son does not need school and she's going to end up homeschooling him. And it's just, I don't know. I don't even know at this point what's the next step, because we've gone over all the steps. And then I have other parents that don't believe in anxiety. So that was my other question, right? What about the parents who do not believe in anxiety? Because I think that's a cultural aspect where it's difficult. I had a few parents who would just say, in my time, we didn't have anxiety. We just dealt with the problems and that was it. And
yeah. So I will start by saying, very much so, especially with children. Usually the child is not the problem, the parent is the problem. Okay, that is always the case when it comes to children. And so to answer your later question, if they don't believe in anxiety, that's okay. I like to say that, like, the diagnosis, the label anxiety, it's just a label. I like to say that it's for, I guess, us as therapists to identify what we're talking about, and like for insurance companies to bill. But what we're really treating are the person's symptoms. So don't use the word anxiety when you're talking to the parent. Talk about the behavior, what the child is exhibiting, and how can we help the behavior. Don't mention the word anxiety if they don't believe in anxiety, right? At the end of the day, they don't need to say, oh, my child has anxiety. What is needed is for them to do these strategies, like implement these strategies that are going to help their children. And so for the other part of this, ACS was called. This has been escalated. So I think it's out of your hands at this point. I think for this mother and this now ACS case, they need to get a therapist involved. Another professional has to be involved, right? This child who doesn't want to go to school needs to talk to someone. They need help to figure this out. And the mother is saying that she's going to homeschool her children. I mean, you guys are the professionals when it comes to school. So please tell me, can you just decide to homeschool, or do you have to get like certified by the state, or like there's a program that says you have to, like, you know how to homeschool, right? She can't just say she's going to homeschool her child. So, education there also for the parent.
Yeah, unfortunately, they pretty much can.
They
Okay.
can?
Yeah, they can just say, poof, I'm homeschooling my kid. And they register with whatever district and say, I'm homeschooling my kid. And so you have to say you're doing it, and you have to formally register. But there's no vetting, there's no curriculum, there's no, yeah, it's really weird. I think I'm saying that correctly. Yeah.
Okay, that's
don't get me started. Yeah, we only got 2 minutes. Don't get me started on homeschooling. Some parents do a great job with homeschooling. I've seen some really successful stuff. But on the other hand, it can be an excuse too. We used to say parenting can be a verb, and some parents choose it to not be a verb, but that's
yeah. So with that said, if it's either there's no certification required, I think it's really in the hands of ACS now. So like, make sure that there are certain things occurring, mandate certain services.
Yeah, somebody stated the parents can truly homeschool and others can just do it and get them off their back. Yeah, they have to submit a curriculum plan, but you can download them. You can download. Oh, crazy.
Yeah.
Anybody else? We got 1 minute. This has been a great meeting.
Really good questions too.
Yeah. So thanks to everyone who attended, and thanks to Shireen for presenting, and thanks for all the great questions. I'm going to share my screen. That's crazy. I like that. I'll share my screen. This was a good presentation. This is our PD committee, our professional development committee, who arranges for these things. If you want to join the PD committee, you could. We take them. We have some upcoming PDs. We have one, I get my weeks mixed up, 2 weeks from tonight, a suicide prevention webinar. A couple weeks after that, trauma-informed practice webinar. And we're trying to do a couple a month, and they're getting scheduled as we speak. Be on the alert for emails to register for the webinars. As I said in the chats, we will send you a copy of we will send you a link to the presentation, the recording of the presentation, as well as a certificate of attendance if you attended this evening. Without further ado, Thanks again, Shireen, and thanks everyone for coming.
Good night.
Good night.